Hello again. Do without wilt shall be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and now, having given the introduction to magic in theory and practice last time, we're moving into the main text. So, Chapter 0, the magical theory of the universe. Let's get into it. Magic in theory and practice has a total of 22 chapters, 0 to 21, and 7 appendices. I will go over the chapters, one per video, like the previous parts of Book 4, but will not cover the rituals and other material in the appendices until a later time. So, we begin today with Chapter 0, the magical theory of the universe. This chapter opens by stating that there are three main views of the universe based on religion, quote, dualism, monism, and nihilism, end quote. Crowley reconciles dualism, monism, and nihilism in Bereshith, and while I will not draw off of that text for this video, it is mandatory for one to understand the ideas set forth in this chapter. So really quick, let me just give a very rudimentary and simple definitions of these three views of the universe. So nihilism, there is no God, there's no point to existence, it's maybe scientific, maybe we're just here and we're making the best and creating symbols based on what is. The universe started with nothing, it's going to end in nothing. That's the end of the discussion, kind of figure out your own purpose in life and try to be happy. Monism, there is one God, some type of creator, deity. Christianity, Abrahamic religions in general are the best type of monistic examples. Now, dualism can be actually several things, and I don't think that this is implied by Crowley, but I'm going to throw this in also. The idea of many gods, having a pantheon with many deities, and that's not exactly what's meant, but I don't want to leave it out from nihilism and monism. Dualism, by Plato's kind of idea, is that there is a physical world, and then there is a spiritual world, or an other world that is imperceptible to us. So it's kind of like there's two aspects of life, the unseen world and the seen world. Then you could look at Christianity, and you could consider dualism under the Christian view is that leave matter out of it, but there is good and there is evil, right? So there are two opposing forces in the universe. So anyway, read Bereshith if you really want to get a good idea of those three ideologies, and like I said, Crowley reconciles them in Bereshith. To give a reasonable account of the universe, this chapter, and so will I, use the Qabalah as the basis upon which our views stand. Quote, infinite space is called the goddess Nuit, while the infinitely small and atomic, yet omnipresent point is called Hadid. End quote. Nuit is defined in Librel chapter 1, Hadid in chapter 2. The main idea of the universe is that there was nothing, and then at the very beginning of time there was something. But how can something come from nothing? It is the first paradox we must confront as magicians if we are to make any headway in understanding existence. By Qabalah, there are two ideas that can help our limited minds grasp what is going on. The first is the Ein Sof, the absolute Godhead, which is still extant, though beyond the tree of life, thus beyond humanity in all ways. I'll come back to this momentarily. The second concept is the Zimzum. I link a video which explains the Zimzum in the description below. Basically, it is a contraction of God to create a void for creation to take place within, and which we can make synonymous with the Big Bang of physics. The Lurianic Qabalah, which posited the idea of the Zimzum, came in the 1500s. Essentially, there was always the potential energy stored up, but there was not yet a space for that energy to go and create matter. By the contraction and expansion of the energy, heat and pressure exploded the Godhead, and by Qabalah, the tree of life sprang through the prism of Kether, descending and changing through each of the 10 spheres from Kether to Malkuth. 10 Sephiroth and 22 paths became the model upon which we can organize our thoughts and create the metaphors for creation of the universe where we exist. Here, and you could take a look on your screen, I'm going to quote from the Book of Lies. It's the very first chapter after ? called O exclamation point, and like I said, it should pop up on your screen now. O exclamation point. The anti-primal triad, which is not God. Nothing is, nothing becomes, nothing is not. The first triad, which is God. I am, I utter the word, I hear the word. The abyss. The word is broken up, there is knowledge. Knowledge is relation. These fragments are creation. The broken manifests light. So at the top of that chapter, it says, Kephale he oik esti kephale. And that translates as, a head is a head. The title of this chapter is O exclamation point. It's the kates and the phallus in union. It is symbolic and synonymous with the Tao Day of Taoism. Positive 1 plus negative 1 equals 0 equals 2. All of existence is confined within these two opposites that are in union. We have matter and motion, light and dark, opaque and translucent. Also, matter and spirit. From these two opposites, much like the sex of our species, creation occurs in the universe's birth. Already, can you see how the reconciliation of nihilism, monism, and dualism is coming in? So right here, we have the union of opposites, so there's always two opposing forces. We have the one source of energy from which the universe came, and that universe is the Kabbalistic zero, which is no thing, which is nothing, no God, not God. So it's almost ironic that the Lema is nihilistic, monistic, and dualistic, and I just kind of find that funny, and it's a lot to wrap one's head around. But read Bereshith and you'll see how these ideas are reconciled even further. Now, this union of opposites has been encapsulated in the symbolic illustration which we call Baphomet, the dual-sexed, horned, jackal-headed satyr deity who rests upon the universe. Since God is beyond conception and description altogether, this chapter opens with three Kabbalistic veils, the first being, quote, not God, end quote, and not and God, which are one and the same. After the veils is Keter, whose divine name is Eheia, I am, God's self-reflection. Then comes the dyad, Chakma, the word, if you will, which is the creation by the word. Then comes Bina, the word being heard or received, the seed being received. This is synonymous with the seed entering the womb, the abyss, the threshold between the unity of the supernal triad and the manifestation of the universe below. Below the abyss, the word is broken up, becoming many. Knowledge, matter, and experience. Then matter in relation to other things. Then fragments taking further form. Finally, the light of Kether being clothed in flesh. This is crude thus far, but we will take this all much further, I promise. By standards of the Book of the Law, Heru Raha is composed of Ra Hor Kuit and Hor Par Krat, the active and passive. They are the crown-conquering child of the Aeon. All in unity, the one, Kether, the divine light. The sun, the brightest star in our vicinity, is symbolic of their divine radiance. Below the monad is Chakma, the father, Hadit, and chaos. This is motion, or the principle of the universe that allows motion to be, as Heru Raha, Hadit, and Nuit are themselves in union far above all concepts we attribute to them. After Chakma is Bina the mother, Nuit, or Babylon. From our earthly conception, Nuit is infinite space, everything external from our single point in consciousness. Hadit, her consort, is the minute point, a single point of consciousness in infinite space, the very center of the universe. But since space is infinite, where then is the center, but everywhere? So, in every point is both Nuit and Hadit, and this can be confusing, save that we have Heru Raha, the union of opposites, the highest state of consciousness possible to us, and a principle of unity which transcends consciousness altogether. It is almost like saying this, that if by the Zimzum a void was created, then God was external of that void, and creation made it separate from God. But this is only an illusion of the Maya, as God, if infinite, is even present within the void, just so far above comprehension of our meat brains that we cannot see or experience it by sense perception. From here I must quote Crowley in full to explain the rest of the Tree of Life. Quote, An immeasurable abyss divides the supernals from all manifestations of reason or the lower qualities of men. In the ultimate analysis of reason, we find all reason identified with the abyss. Yet this abyss is the crown of the mind. Purely intellectual faculties all obtain here. This abyss has no number, for it is all in confusion. Below this abyss we find the moral qualities of man, of which there are 6. The highest is symbolized by the number 4. Its nature is fatherly. Mercy and authority are the attributes of its dignity. The number 5 is balanced against it. The attributes of 5 are energy and justice. 4 and 5 are again combined and harmonized in the number 6, whose nature is beauty and harmony, mortality and immortality. In the number 7, the feminine nature is again predominant, but it is the masculine type of female, the Amazon, who is balanced in the number 8 by the feminine type of male. In the number 9, we reach the last of the purely mental qualities. It identifies change with stability. Pendant to this sixfold system is the number 10, the balance of the Sephiroth. Kether, number 1. Kether is in Malkuth and Malkuth in Kether, but after another manner. Chakma, number 2, is Yod of Tetragrammaton, and therefore also unity. Bina, number 3, is the He of Tetragrammaton, the letter He, and therefore the Emperor of the Tarot. Chesed, number 4, is Dalet, Venus, the female. Gebora, number 5, is the Sephir of Mars, the male. Tifereth, 6, is the hexagram, harmonizing and mediating between Kether and Malkuth. Also it reflects Kether. That which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above. Netzach, number 7, and Hod, number 8, balanced as in text. Yesod, number 9, just as see text next to it, it's stability. Malkuth, number 10, contains all the numbers, which include the whole of matter as we know it by the senses. End quote. Just very briefly, as I said above, the first 3 Sephiroth, below that is the abyss, which separates 4 through 10, which is the body all the way up to the highest state of the reasoning logical mind. The mind is cut off from the supernal realm, which is the highest possible state of consciousness, of existence, possible state of unity, which is beyond consciousness. So this abyss is symbolized by a broken sphere, I guess you'd call it, but it's like a dotted line instead of a full line to indicate that Doth, number 11, is not actually a numbered Sephiroth. It has no number. As I said above, in the abyss all is confusion. To keep it short and simple, if we look at the supernal triad as the unconscious mind, and we look at everything below the abyss as the conscious mind, that abyss that separates God consciousness from human consciousness, or the unconscious from conscious mind, if we look at Greek mythology, there is, when any character descends into hell, there's that river, the river Styx. That river Styx separates the world of the living from the world of the dead. So that the abyss could be symbolic in that sense, but in Kabbalah, it's also where Choronzon is said to live. He's a figure synonymous with Satan in a certain way, from a certain point of view. And he's basically what keeps you from accessing the unconscious mind consciously, right? So it's something that needs to be traversed, and it's a very difficult thing that if you're not ready to make that leap or that journey, it could be potentially deadly or hazardous or it could at least make you very psychologically unstable if you're not ready and you have not been trained and fortified and have the integrity to go down into that abyss and come out the other side. So the abyss just cuts off the heavenly realm from the earthly realm and the mental realm, the human realm. Moving on. Now, the tree of 10 Sephiroth comes with 22 paths, which have not been covered in full in this chapter. Crowley basically follows on the numbers 1 through 10, so that's just the main 10 Sephiroth. But I will, as I'm going through the rest of this chapter, interject with some points about the paths. Now, what is covered is Yod He Vav He, and we will discuss that next. So, quote, The formula of Tetragrammaton is the most important for the practical magician. Here, Yod equals 2, He equals 3, Vav equals 4 to 9, and He final equals 10. So just keep in mind, 2 is Chakma, 3 is Bina, 4 through 9 are Chesed, down to Yesod, and 10 is Malkuth. Kether is above this schema, so it's not incorporated in Tetragrammaton, as the light is beyond all, so it's even above the Yod He Vav He God. Quote, the number 2 represents Yod, the divine or archetypal world, and the number 1 is only attained by the destruction of the god and the magician in Samadhi. The world of angels is under the numbers 4 to 9, and that of spirits under the number 10, end quote. Where it says in this chapter that I just quoted that the number 1 is only attained by the destruction of God, it's very much like that sentiment, if you see the Buddha on the path, kill him, or if you see God on the path, kill him, because it's not the real God. Just kind of thought that that's interesting, and it's probably what Crowley is getting at by writing what he did. Yod He Vav He is often called Tetragrammaton. Yod is fire, our highest aspirations, the heat of our minds while ecstatic in prayer and worship. The letter itself looks like a spark of fire, like the flame of a candle. Yod rests in the second sphere, Chakma, but Yod's uppermost tip is said to just touch Kether, thus it is a light by the flame of the divine light. He rests in Bina, and means window, that the Kates is like the opening of a window in a house. It is assigned water, our emotions, our intuition, our blood, which contains prana, our life force. Vav rests in Tiferet, but it is assigned Chesed, Gabora, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Remember from that chapter of the Book of Lies, when I said that below the abyss the word is broken up, becoming many? There came from the supernal mother and father a multitude to represent the mind in all complexities and the astral realm. Now moving forward with Tetragrammaton. Vav means sword. Our mind should be sharpened by our studies until it is razor sharp and swift. The sword is double-edged, for as easily as it can strike our enemies, truth can turn on the one wielding it just as easily. The mind represented by air. Thoughts flow, and words we speak are carried as vibrations through the air to others. Lastly of Tetragrammaton is He final, earth, the completion of the work, creation fully manifested. Earth is our bodies, the physical world, the universe. Further, these 4 letters Yod He Vav He create a fourfold tree in the worlds of Atziluth, Bria, Ruach, and Asaya. Quote, our magical alphabet of the Sephiroth and paths, 32 letters as it were, has been expanded into 4 worlds corresponding to the 4 letters of the name Yod He Vav He, and each Sephira is supposed to contain a tree of life of its own. Thus we obtain 400 Sephiroth instead of the original 10, and the paths being capable of similar multiplications, or rather subdivision, the number is still further extended. Of course, this process might indefinitely be continued without destroying the original system, end quote. With this scheme, one can plug in any aspect of the universe into a symbolic pocket to properly analyze and organize the whole of creation. Now concerning the numbers 1 through 10 and 22 paths, quote, all these numbers are, of course, parts of the magician himself, considered as the microcosm. The microcosm is an exact image of the macrocosm. The great work is the raising of the whole man in perfect balance to the power of infinity, end quote. We are, after all, very complex beings, and the process of Hermetic occult initiation is, by ascending the macrocosmic tree, to reduce oneself back towards zero, absolute union by non-being. Here I'm going to divert from what Crowley has written, and I will simplify how you can use this schema. Take and make a serious study of the magician's tables from 777. Work towards committing these to memory. Next, begin to memorize the definitions of philosophical numerology. Now, with these numbers and symbols, start to analyze them. Why is a swan the animal, real or imaginary, of Path 1 Kether? Where have swans been used in mythology? What about it has a commonality with the divine light? One example to give you is that Zeus was known to turn into a swan, whereby he impregnated a woman, creating a demigod. Swans are also white. They are known for their beauty and grace, etc., etc. Another example, why is the queen's scale color of Hod, the number 8, orange? We know that the color of Mercury is orange. Thoth has orange skin, and he is a very mercurial deity. But take all of this and answer earnestly how these individual paths are something that reveal what the universe is. Then, take into account what are they in relation to the human, to self. I'm oversimplifying on purpose to make this easy to understand, but you should take this much further and deeper, looking at every symbol of each path and seeing why they all correspond with the number of the Sephiroth, or each path in Sephiroth's mystical number. Gematria helps sometimes in this process and can yield much clarity. So if you take each letter of a Hebrew or Greek word, and they each have a number assigned to each letter, and you add up, so let's say it's a 3-letter word and it equates to, 44, you would look at the number 44 and what other words are under the number 44 and meditate on them as a group and see what about these words indicate the number 44. Is there a commonality? Is there an opposition in these words? It can help you understand each number by looking at words that add up to that number. Next, work towards being able to connect any one path of the tree to any other path on the tree. For example, let's connect Yod to Netzach. Venus is the symbol of the Virgin. Isis is the virginal goddess who birthed Horus. As the Virgin, we think of Virgo, thus the Hermit card of the tarot, thus Yod. When you could take any letter or Sephiroth and connect it to any other letter or Sephiroth, you are in a good position. Quote, let us say, once again, that the magical language is nothing but a convenient system of classification to enable the magician to docket his experience as he obtains them. Yet this is true also, that, once the language is mastered, one can divine the unknown by study of the known, just as one's knowledge of Latin and Greek enables one to understand some unfamiliar English word derived from those sources. End quote. But I say this, completely contradictory to the prophet, as per this chapter. The tree of life, Hermetic Qabalah, is so much more than a mere file cabinet. It is a living, breathing tree. According to the Zohar, it grows in one's heart, extends outward where its seed is planted in the hearts of those who are receptive to it. Like any tree that needs light and nourishment, this tree needs your light to shine, and its nourishment is your study and practice of it. Concerning the arrangement of the paths which connect the spheres on the tree, as correspondence of each letter to its path, the way they are has been superbly thought out, and Crowley writes that the current order is perfect. This is meant to include now at present the switch of the tarot cards for Zadi and He. He writes, quote, Bina, the supernal understanding, is connected with Tifereth, the human consciousness, by Zain, Gemini, the oracles of the gods, or the intuition. That is, the attribution represents a psychological fact. To replace it by the devil is either Yuma or plain idiocy. Again, the card Fortitude, Leo, balances majesty and mercy with strength and severity. What sense is there in putting death, the scorpion, in its stead? End quote. Note that astrology factors into the tree of life, giving us a set of symbols to base our symbolic observations of the universe upon. Keter is the light, the force of creation, if you will, and the first sphere after, Chakma, constitutes the wheel of the zodiac. Then Bina, down to Yesod, the ninth sphere, are assigned each one of the 7 classical planets, as you can see on your screen now. Malkuth, the lowest sphere, is the completion of the light's descent and signifies matter. Thus it is assigned the 4 elements, earth, air, water, and fire. Malkuth is in Keter, thus spirit is here as well, in that sense, though hidden, if you will. The 22 paths are assigned each one of the 12 zodiac signs, 7 planets, or 5 elements, as you can see on your screen now. To fully appreciate the tree of life, you must play around in your mind with all the correspondences from Liber 777. To begin, in my opinion, it is useful to memorize the magician's tables. After, look at the astrological correspondences of the paths and the spheres. Work on connecting each path to the sphere which has the same or similar astrological correspondences. For example, The letter Resh, path 31, corresponds with the sun, Sol. So does Tiferet. Resh means head. What about Resh gives it a solar disposition? The same for Tiferet. The head is the highest point of our body. It holds our brain and cerebellum. Thought occurs here, as does the conscious and unconscious mind. Tiferet is placed in the center of one's being. It is where the heart resides. Often we say to someone in time of need, think with your heart. Ancient philosophers had long and heated debates about whether thought originated in the brain or the heart. The heart pumps our blood, giving the brain oxygen. Can you see the connection with just these crude elementary thoughts I've given as points of meditation? Of course, you must take this much further, but I hope you get the gist and continue on your own from here. You should also meditate on why is a path the letter that it is when it connects to Sephiroth, right? So for instance, path Tav, which is Saturn, it's also Earth, connects Yesod and Malkuth. So that's a very simple one, right? Malkuth is Earth, and Yesod is the Ruach, but it's also the animal part of the soul. So Tav, this Saturn, this earthly aspect, connects just the stability, the foundation of the higher tree of life to the base material world, right? So can you see the connection? So meditate on each connection, right? Take any path and see what two spheres connected, and do a long meditation on its correspondences, the path, and how those correspondences are important as an intermediary between two spheres. The examples above are only of the microcosmic tree, but there is also the macrocosmic to consider, the body of God as it's called. Take each tree, the micro and the macro, and work out as much of the symbolism as possible. You will find that if you fully understand one of these trees, you will instantly understand the other, as they are identical, thus the saying as above, so below. So, then work on connecting the symbolism of the microcosmic tree to the macrocosmic. It should be easy enough once you get to that point. Please know that the Hermetic Qabalah, as we use the planetary symbolism, we are not talking about the actual sun or planet Jupiter, but the energy that is associated with the planet indicated. Quote, when we speak of dealing with the planets in Magick, the reference is usually not to the actual planets, but to parts of the Earth which are of the nature attributed to these planets. Thus, when we say that Nakiel is the intelligence of the sun, we do not mean that he lives in the sun, but only that he has a certain rank and character, and although we can invoke him, we do not necessarily mean that he exists in the same sense of the word in which our butcher exists. When we conjure Nakiel to visible appearance, it may be that our process resembles creation, or rather, imagination, more nearly than it does calling forth. The aura of a man is called the magical mirror of the universe, and so far as anyone can tell, nothing exists outside of this mirror, end quote. We are now coming to the end of this chapter, and though, quote, in this chapter we are only able to give a very thin outline of magical theory, end quote, I have here given you the tools to begin really understanding the magical universe, of which the Tree of Life is a wonderful model. Just keep in mind, quote, the conceptions of magic are themselves profoundly mathematical. The whole basis of our theory is the Qabalah, which corresponds to mathematics and geometry. There is a certain natural connection between certain letters, words, numbers, gestures, shapes, perfumes, and so on, so that any idea, or, as we might call it, spirit, may be composed or called forth by the use of those things which are harmonious with it, and express particular parts of its nature, end quote. This study of the universe is both an analysis of the external universe via symbolic means, using the Tree of Life, but at the same time is a most profound journey inward. If you understand either the internal or external world, you will simultaneously understand the other. Yet, so far as anything is real, it is unreal, and unknowable, for the limitations of the mind are great. Nevertheless, despite the fact that all thoughts are lies, you must go through the journey of seeking to understand as much knowledge as possible, for only by knowing the enemy can you transcend it. And that, my dear friends, is truly the point here. To overcome the mind and there find union with God, becoming like God yourself. Love is the law, love under will. See you in the next one.